Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well, and welcome to my official power rankings for NFL Week 1 as we've just wrapped it up. Also, if you'll notice, I am in a new space, so I'll get to some housekeeping stuff real quick before we actually start. Before we begin though, make sure you guys drop a like on this video, as well as subscribing and turning on post notifications so you never miss another video. So let's go ahead and do some housekeeping first. I'll put either timestamp on the screen right now, or I'll have the chapters below, so you can just skip ahead if you don't want to hear all this nonsense. So long story short, I've now moved back into college, finishing up my last year of school, and because of that, I really lost track of doing the daily uploads for the NFL Power Rankings and team breakdowns. As you can probably imagine, it's a little too late to do anything now for those. I apologize. So what I'm going to do right now is go through the remaining teams that I had for that and just quickly list who my order was heading into the season from 11 to number 1. So at 11, I had the Tennessee Titans. At number 10, the New England Patriots. Number 9 was the Seattle Seahawks. Number 8 was the Los Angeles Rams. Number 7 was the San Francisco 49ers. 6 was the Baltimore Ravens, 5 was the Cleveland Browns, 4 was the Green Bay Packers, 3 was the Buffalo Bills, 2 was the Kansas City Chiefs, and number 1 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I will also have listed down below the tiers for each of my power rankings, and I'll let you know as we go on throughout the video which teams are in which tiers, just from my preseason stuff. For Super Bowl contenders, which was my first tier, I have 1 through 5. And then teams on the fringe of contention to finish out that list was number 6, Baltimore, all the way through number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers. So with that housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and get into my first official power rankings of the season. Now, it is week 1, so I might overreact a little bit on some of these, but I tried to keep it subdued. That game last night really messed me up. I was trying throughout basically the entire game to try to figure out what I was going to say even about it, and figure out where to put those teams. I was kind of flip-flopping throughout the entire game, trying to figure out where they would go. But I think that I have a solid list now, so let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with the bottom dwellers. At number 32, dropping 3 spots, is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, they look terrible. They lost to what everyone thought was going to be the worst team in football, frankly, this year, in the Houston Texans, and they look bad. They looked really bad. Urban Meyer, as of now, doesn't look like he still really has an understanding of what he's trying to do coaching-wise. Trevor Lawrence looked all right, although he did have some interceptions, I believe. So there's just obviously still a lot of work to do with this team, and I am glad because I almost did kind of overreact to them heading into the season with how much talent they had on the roster, how deep they were in certain spots, but luckily I kind of held my ground and I made sure to keep them at the back of the rankings, and that's probably for the best. Number 31 is going to be the Detroit Lions. They kind of got trounced by the 49ers, but luckily for them, the Jaguars were just even worse, frankly. That's the only way to say it. The biggest thing with this team is going to be that wide receiver room. They really just need to get more guys in there. And I mean, that's all there is to it, really. And then moving up ahead of these guys, we have the Houston Texans at number 30. They had a really good performance, although granted it was against the Jaguars. So you can put as much stock into that as you will. Tyrod Taylor looked pretty good, all things considered. So that's who I have in the bottom dwellers for my NFL power rankings. Then in my next tier, we have the non-factors with interesting pieces to watch. Starting out at this tier, moving down a spot, is going to be the New York Jets. They played against the Panthers. They did lose Mekhi Becton, who is going to be out for a little bit of time, which is unfortunate for them because Zach Wilson had 0 time to throw the ball. He was kind of running around for his life out there. as were basically all of these rookie quarterbacks we're going to talk about in this. And just another disclaimer, I did not get a chance to watch every single game this weekend. I had a pretty busy weekend, and I've just been busy all of college basically starting. So I'm going to try in the future to be able to watch all the games. I do have Game Pass, so I can go back and look at them. And if not, I'll try to at least catch the highlights, which I also didn't get a chance to do before recording this. So apologies there if I'm not in depth on some of these as maybe I should be. So next up we have the New York Football Giants, who they looked bad. I know Saquon is still trying to come back from that injury, but they did not look good against the Denver team, who I really don't think is all that. They looked surprisingly good, and you'll see where they have them a little bit later, but we'll see with the Giants. I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer there, but we're going to have to wait and see, I guess. And just not overreact, I guess, even though I dropped on 3 spots. So then at number 27 is the Atlanta Falcons, who are going to drop 6 spots for me. I mean, what was that? They just got absolutely killed in their game. They did not have a good weekend, to say the least. And as I've said before, it's looking more and more likely, and I think it's more and more likely that they should have traded, or not traded, but they should have let Matt Ryan walk, maybe traded him, whatever. I don't know how the cap situation was for Matt Ryan this offseason, but they should have moved on from him, started with a new GM and a new regime under a new quarterback. And as I said before, Justin Fields is right there out of Kennesaw, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. They had it right on their plates, and I think that they personally are going to look back at this draft and really wonder what happened in this process and how they could have overlooked Justin Fields in the way that they did. So I have the Falcons there. They got beat up by an Eagles team who I don't think is that good, but they're interesting, to say the least. So then I have the Carolina Panthers at 26, just kind of staying put. They did beat the Jets, but they weren't necessarily overpowering of them. One thing you can say is the front 7 looked really good. Brian Burns, Derek Brown, Shaq Thompson. They really came to play in this game, although granted against an offensive line for the Jets that is kind of so-so, I guess you could say. So that's where I have the Carolina Panthers at staying put. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, I have them jumping up 5 spots to number 25 on this list. They were impressive. They beat up on the Falcons. If I'm being honest, I would have taken the Falcons to win this game. I think I actually did have them winning this game, but they beat them up, honestly. That's the best way I can put it. I think they marched into Mercedes-Benz Stadium and put a beat down on Atlanta. Don't quote me on that, but they looked good. They looked pretty good in that game. Devontae Smith looks like he's going to be a good player. So I'm a little more excited now for the Eagles than I was before, a little more optimistic. But as the season goes on, we'll see if that optimism will stay put or if eventually I'll change my mind on them again. So then moving on to my teams who have an outside chance, where really everything has to go right to make the playoffs to this point. I have the Minnesota Vikings coming in at number 24, dropping 4 spots. Listen, I know that they were on the road. I understand that. But in the same vein, they were playing the Bengals. Now, as you'll see here in a little bit, I was surprised by the Bengals. They were playing at home. However, you couldn't get the run game going at all against a group who was not a great run defense last year, where you have Dalvin Cook, who is arguably the best running back in the NFL when it comes to pure running. We'll see with the Vikings. I mean, the secondary mainly is the biggest concern. They looked absolutely dreadful. That play where Jamar Chase cooks Bashaud Breeland really sticks out to me. So they got a lot of stuff to figure out, really on both sides of the ball, I think, for Minnesota going forward. Then at 23, I have the Washington football team dropping 1 spot. It's hard to move them up at all after losing Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that while Taylor Heineke is good, he's a solid player, I think that is a little bit of a downgrade. I do like Fitzpatrick's highs, and I'll take his lows over a guy like Taylor Heineke. Now, there were a lot of people saying that Heineke should have got the starting job anyway at the beginning of the season. Well, here's his chance. Now he can prove himself, and we'll see what they do next week. I think they play the Cowboys next week, if I'm not mistaken. The Giants. So that should be a bounce-back week for them. That should be a win. I will say I liked how they played against a tough Chargers team, but it does suck that they lose Fitzpatrick like that, who I think is the best quarterback they've had on this team in a while. Honestly, they might as well get Cam Newton on the phone. Ron Rivera's worked with him before, and you still have a lot of young guys on this team who could benefit from a player like Cam Newton who has the experience, and specifically playoff experience, that they might be looking for. At number 22, I have the Cincinnati Bengals jumping up 5 spots. They looked pretty impressive. They were playing at home. The run defense looked really good. I actually did get a chance to watch this game. I was kind of flipping back and forth between this game and the Steelers and the Bills. They looked good in this game. Jamar Chase, looks like all those drop problems that people were saying happened with him just disappeared. He had a fantastic game. Joe Burrow looked like Joe Burrow of last year before he went down. But the offensive line was still not great. I think Joe got sacked 5 times, if I'm not mistaken. So that is still something that's going to have to be ironed out. They're going to have to figure out better solutions at the offensive line position going forward, and I'm hoping that in the upcoming draft they actually address the position a little bit better than they did. So then at number 21, I have the Chicago Bears dropping 2 spots. Oh man, the Chicago Bears. Matt Nagy, I thought he was a lot better of a coach than that. It looked really rough throughout the whole game, just on the offensive side of the ball. It's very clear that Andy Dalton is not the answer going forward. And Andy Dalton, like I've said before, is the best quarterback that's ever played under Matt Nagy in his tenure here at Chicago. And the couple of plays where they brought in Justin Fields were just stupid gadget plays. So honestly, I think at this point, the sooner that Fields starts, the better. Like I said before, I think the bye week after Baltimore, or when they have to play Baltimore, is when they're going to bring him in. Like, I can understand why they wouldn't this game. You don't want him to get torn up by Aaron Donald and have him going against guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Williams in the secondary. We'll see with Chicago. We'll see. I think a lot of it comes down to the quarterback play and specifically coaching. At number 20, the Denver Broncos are going to jump up 3 spots. They looked pretty solid against the Giants. Teddy Bridgewater looks like he is kind of the answer now for this team, at least going forward. I guess right now I would rather probably take him over a guy like Drew Lock. I would take the consistency at this point with how talented Denver's team is over the peaks and valleys of a Drew Lock. Now, the only unfortunate part about Denver is they lost Jerry Jeudy for a couple of weeks. However, good for them. They have one of the deepest wide receiver groups in the NFL, so expect to see Tim Patrick and especially KJ Hamler get a lot more playing time for the Denver Broncos. So that's it for that tier. So then we go into the next tier, teams that are missing a few pieces, or really that it factor. So I have the Las Vegas Raiders jumping up to number 19 after being number 24, 5 whole spots. They looked good. Granted, they were at home. The Ravens have kind of been beat up, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get up to the Ravens, because that's the one team I feel like I didn't completely overreact about, was the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe I should have. I don't know. Derek Carr played arguably his best football game ever. John Gruden was typical John Gruden, especially on the last play of the game where he trots out the field goal team, and then they get a delay of game, and then he trots back out the offense, and then they win the game on that touchdown. So you really don't know what to expect with this Raiders team. Like I've said before, I think John Gruden is an outstanding game planner. He's a really good coach when it comes to that type of stuff, when it comes to play calling. It's just a matter of the talent with this team and just accruing some better players. So that's all I have to say about them going forward. Number 18 is going to be the Tennessee Titans. Man, they ever looked bad. They let the Cardinals come into their stadium and absolutely smacked them. I think this was the biggest blowout of the entire day, 38-13. This was a bad showing for them. So far, without Arthur Smith, the Tennessee Titans are looking not so great on offense. They let Chandler Jones get 5 sacks. I mean, Chandler Jones is a good player, but he's not a 5-sack game a good type of player, at least not in this point in his career. So we'll see where the Titans go forward from here, but they got a lot of questions they got to answer coming into next week, and we'll see what they can come up with. Moving up a spot, I have the Dallas Cowboys at 17. Although they did lose that game to Tampa, they did look okay. Dak played one of his better games I've seen lately. He looked like he was worth the money, honestly. He played up to that level. Amari was awesome. When CeeDee Lamb wasn't dropping the football, he was awesome. Michael Gallup before he went out, Cedric Wilson. The pieces are all there in terms of the receiving game. It's just the run game, once again. I mean, they were missing Zach Martin, so that doesn't help. But they only ran it, I think, like 14 times or something like that I saw. So you can't have that in a pro football game. You just have to establish some sort of run. And I know that's not a popular opinion anymore, but I think you have to establish at least something, some kind of a run game. And they couldn't do it with, I guess Zeke has still been banged up from what I'm hearing, but we'll see with the Cowboys. I have them moved up a spot just because they did look good in that loss to Tampa, and they really did take in the distance going to Raymond James Stadium, which is hard to do. Then at 16, I have the Colts dropping 4 spots. It was just about really the way that Seattle kind of dominated the offense in this game. Carson Wentz was all right, although he was kind of rushed. The offensive line was bad. And as I've been saying all offseason, really, I think it's going to be interesting to see if it bites him in the ass for not getting a guy in the draft. You know, not drafting a Tevin Jenkins, for example, who I know was out with the Bears. But I don't know. Why would you not get a guy for Carson Wentz who is known to be a bad quarterback under pressure? When he's got a lot of guys rushing him constantly, he will play hero ball. He will make bad decisions. We know all of these things about Carson Wentz, and it's kind of shocking that they went with an old Eric Fisher who is coming off a torn Achilles as kind of their fail-safe for his blind side. I think he's on his blind side. I don't know. But I don't know. We'll see with the Colts. For a lot of these teams, it's still week 1. So we kind of have to wait and see where they go from here. So then 15, dropping 5 spots, is the New England Patriots. Look, I thought that they were going to come against the Dolphins and kind of prove that Mac Jones is the guy. And Mac had a good game. However, I don't think they should have dropped Cam Newton. I think I can understand if you would have started Cam over Mac, or if Mac over Cam, vice versa. However, I think it's a bad look, a really bad look at the start of the season when you're a fresh team and you got all these fresh faces in here to lose to Miami like that. And I mean, the defense was all right. The defense was good. This was a low-scoring game. We'll see. I still have a lot of faith in the Patriots, but maybe it's just going to take a little bit more time for all those new faces to really gel together in the way that we might want them to. So then right above them, moving up a spot, I have the Miami Dolphins. Tua looked all right. The team in general just kind of looked all right, in my opinion. Jalen Waddle looks like he's going to be really good. Honestly, all these receivers in this class look like they're going to be really good. Number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers are just going to stay put for me. They did win. Justin Herbert looked awesome. Rashawn Slater was awesome. They didn't really do enough, I think, though, to really wow me in the way that some of these other teams have that are higher up on these rankings, and we will get to those with the next team here, which is number 12, the Arizona Cardinals. They looked freaking outstanding. The wide receivers all came to play. DeAndre Hopkins had himself a game. Kyler Murray looks like the front runner for the MVP at this moment. It is week 1, but still, he looked really good. He had 5 touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 on the ground. Christian Kirk played well. The defense was tenacious. They got after it. 5 sacks alone from Chandler Jones. This game really sold me on the Arizona Cardinals a little bit better. As I had kind of said in my deep dive of them, I really wasn't a big fan of Cliff Kingsbury. I still had a couple of questions there, and that was really the big thing. And now they look really good. Although, to be fair, they also started out the season beating the 49ers last year. So we'll see about that. And I think as long as a guy like Kyler Murray can stay healthy, then this team has a chance. So we'll see what happens with them in the coming weeks when they play some of those NFC West opponents. And next week they play the Vikings. So we're going to have to see just how good that defense is next week, just how good this offense can be. Let's see what happens. I'm excited, though, for the Cardinals. Then at number 11, oh, man. The Green Bay Packers dropped 7 spots. I know week 1 we're not supposed to overreact to stuff. This doesn't feel like an overreaction to me. The Packers played that bad. The offense was stagnant. The only guy who looked like he gave a damn, frankly, was Davante Adams. Aaron Jones had a bad game. The run game was awful. Everything was just bad. Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what's up with him. He looked not great in that game. Both of those interceptions were on him. The first ball he threw was behind Davante Adams. And then he just threw that second ball up almost like an arm punt. I really didn't understand it. The defense is basically the same. The run defense is really bad, and everyone in coverage outside of Jair and the safeties, a.k.a. the second corner spot, a.k.a. Kevin King, are really stinking bad. A lot of questions about this team going forward. I hope they can show me something the week after at San Francisco, but I guarantee you if they play like that against that team, they have the Lions this week, so I'm going to cut them some slack there. But if they play like they did tonight, or on Sunday night, like they did, there's going to be problems in Green Bay. Number 10, jumping 6 spots, was the New Orleans Saints. They looked great against my Packers. The coverage was really good, even with Marshawn Lattimore dealing with, I think it was a bruised thumb or a chipped thumb or something like that. It's just something crazy like that. Jameis Winston looked outstanding. He really surprised me in that game. He was patient. He was not the Jameis of old. He can see linebackers now, which is kind of crazy. And especially moving around within the pocket, even scrambling, you still see that really good athlete that Jameis Winston has always been. So the Saints team is surprisingly good today. The only problem with them, I think, is going to be the wide receiver depth once they get against a team who has actually good second corners. But for now, I'm impressed. I am thoroughly impressed. Number 9 is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, who jump up 5 spots. They looked really good as well. I mean, Big Ben was making all the right decisions. They were still throwing it fairly short, but the defense really came to play against this Buffalo Bills offense, who we've considered basically a top 5 group in the NFL. And we'll get to the Bills in a little bit, but the Steelers did surprise me in this game. The one thing I will say is that I think they do need to pick up the running game just a little bit more. I would like to see them run the ball a little bit more, but Kendrick Green looked great at center for them, the 3rd-round pick out of Illinois. So the Steelers looked good, and I might have been wrong about the Steelers, honestly. There's a lot of these teams, especially the Saints and the Steelers, I think are going to be maybe the big ones that I'll be wrong about heading in, to the offseason, but we'll see. At number 8, the Baltimore Ravens. I only have them dropping 2 spots simply because they were playing on the road. They had a lot of guys missing, and that might, affect them going forward. Losing Marcus Peters, J.K. Dobbins, a lot of their running backs, Gus Edwards as well. Although Tyson Williams looked pretty good in that game, there are still, I think, going to be some growing pains with the running game for this team. I think this is going to be a really good test, though, of Greg Roman and his ability as an offensive coordinator to be able to adapt to the situation, because up to this point, he's just been known as a guy to just run the ball basically all the time. So we'll see if he can adapt to the situation and how this all goes for them. At number 7, I have the Buffalo Bills dropping 4 spots. That offense did not look great. Josh Allen he was all right. We saw flashes of Josh Allen from last year, although after this game, the argument I think can be made as to whether that was kind of Josh Allen's peak performance that we saw in that year, like that's his max potential or not. We'll see going forward. The defense, I have my questions about them, although I think Gregory Rousseau had a really good game. So It's mainly within that secondary, mainly at the second corner spot because Tre'Davious White is good, Micah Hyde is good. We'll just have to see with them. I do have the 49ers moving up a spot at number 6. The biggest problem with them is going to be injuries. They just lost Raheem Mostert. He's out for the year. They lost Jason Verrett. He's out for the year. Good thing for him, he signed his big contract this offseason. There's questions with the 49ers. But then you also have the upside of that they don't even potentially have their best quarterback in yet at Trey Lance, who might not play even this entire season. But he did score their first touchdown of the season, so that might be telling. That might be a sign for them. We'll have to see as the season goes forward. And they play against these tough teams in the NFC West, such as at number 5, the Seattle Seahawks. They looked great, although to be fair, they start the year off like this. It seems every year the Seahawks always do this to us, where they start out really well and they have a really good game to start the season. There's still going to be questions about the secondary. That's probably the biggest area of concern right now outside of like Jamal Adams. But the offense looked really good. New offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. I hope he can keep continuing to improve this team going forward because the offense looks great. So we'll see what happens with Seattle. They're my team number 5. And then moving on to my Super Bowl contenders, this is my number 1 tier of teams. And we dropped a team from this, which was originally 5. And we only have 4 people in here now, 4 teams. Number 4 is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They looked fan-freaking-tastic. Matthew Stafford, looks like if you locked in preseason MVP votes on him, MVP bets, you might make some money off those. His odds, I'm sure, have just skyrocketed at this point. He looks great. The deep ball was there all night against Chicago, and they're crappy, just terrible secondary. What happened to Eddie Jackson, by the way? He looks terrible right now. So the Los Angeles Rams, I got a lot of faith in them. The only question for me is going to be the safety group after losing John Johnson and Troy Hill. Although I did hear last night they have a second-year player who's got the captain badge in that group, so maybe they're fine there. But that's really only the biggest question, and losing Brandon Staley as well. Although he did get replaced by Raheem Morris, who I think is a great defensive coordinator in his own right. He's just not Brandon Staley, who I think is one of, if not the top defensive coordinator in the NFL. Number 3, moving up a spot, even though they lost, is going to be the Cleveland Browns. I mean, if the Chiefs don't do what the Chiefs do, I honestly think the Browns would have won this game. They came out and punched them in the mouth early. I think they kind of stunned the Chiefs. The Chiefs really had to get going and get their momentum up before they really hit their stride and did just what they do, which is incredible. But I really like the look of this Browns team. Baker looked really good in that game. So I'm excited for the Browns this year. I think they have finally managed to break the stigma about same old Browns. Even though they did lose this game, I still really like the way they looked in a losing effort. And then the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are my 1 and 2 on this list. I mean, there's no changing them at this point. There was no reason to change them. I did see some people have the Chiefs ranked ahead of the Bucs, which I guess I can understand, but when you just look at the Bucs roster, the Bucs talent, Joe Tryon played pretty good when he was in the game. They have the most complete roster in the NFL. It's between them and the Browns, basically, for talent-wise, depth-wise. They really aren't missing anybody at any key positions, whereas the Chiefs just have like the best players at like every position and are a little bit shallow. So those are my thoughts on this week's NFL Power Rankings. That's my take on it. Let me know what you thought. Did I have some teams too high or too low? Let me know down in the comments. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, as well as turn on post notifications so you never miss another upload. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.